So this week's Parsha is about wisdom, actually. Well, it's about Joseph, but it's about a lot of things. But wisdom really jumped out at me. So today I'm going to talk about that. In Genesis, in the Torah portion, it's all about Pharaoh's dream, which Joseph interprets, with wisdom, by the way. In 1 Kings, which is the Haftarah portion, it's all about the two women who come to Solomon with a dispute about the dead child, right? Everybody should be probably familiar with that story. And I would like to begin in the book of 1 Kings. We're going to read the whole story, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So we're not starting in the Torah, but we will get there. We're going to go back to it, and we'll see other things too. But we're going to start with Solomon. 1 Kings chapter 3. I'm going to just start reading. Solomon loved Yahweh. That was nice. He loved it. That's a statement. Solomon loved Yahweh, walking in the statutes of David his father, except that he sacrificed and burned incense in the high places. He wasn't supposed to do that. I know, but he did. Okay, so God is kind of winking at that, it seems like. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. In Gibeon, Yahweh appeared to Solomon in a dream by night. And God said, okay, so God is appearing to Solomon in a dream. And he says, ask for what I should give you. And Solomon said, you have shown to your servant David, my father, great chesed. Chesed is loving divine favor, loving kindness. You have shown David, my father, great chesed, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. You have kept for him, for David, this great chesed, that you have given him a son to sit on his throne. That's Solomon, he's talking. As it is today. Now, Yahweh, my God, you have made your servant king instead of David, my father. I am just a little child. I do not know how to go out or to come in. And your servant is among your people, which you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours? What a request. This request pleased Adonai. This is continuing reading. This request pleased Adonai that Solomon had asked this thing. God said to him, because you have asked this thing, and have not asked for yourself long life, nor have you asked for riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice. Yeah, there, behold, I have done according to your word. Behold, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, and after you none will arise like you. Solomon stands alone. Nobody has ever been like him, before or after. I have also given you that which you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you for all your days. And if you will walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my mitzvot as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of Yahweh. So this was a big deal for him. He goes to Jerusalem, stands before the ark, and offered up burnt offerings, offered peace offerings, and made a feast for all his servants. So the next verse is, then 2 women who were prostitutes came to the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, oh, my lord, this woman and I dwell in the same house, and I delivered a child with her in the house. And it happened on the 3rd day after I delivered that this woman also delivered. We were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, just us 2 in the house. This woman's child died in the night because she lay on it. She arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while your servant slept and laid it in her bosom. and laid her dead child in my bosom. When I arose in the morning to nurse my child, behold, it was dead. But when I had looked at it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, whom I bore. She would know. You know how women bond with their child. She knew, that's not my baby. The other woman said, no, but the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son. They argued like this before the king. Then the king said, one says, this is my son who lives, and your son is the dead. And the other says, no, but your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one. Now, one thing that's interesting about that is Solomon just summed up the argument. He understood what they're saying. He's saying, this is the problem. He spoke it out, which is a wise thing to do. He says, yep, this is the issue. Okay, and the king said, get me a sword. So they brought a sword before the king. And the king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other. Then the woman whose the living child was spoke to the king, for her heart yearned over her son. And she said, oh, my lord, give her the living child, and in no way kill him. But the other said, he shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide him. Yeah, and the king answered and said, give her the living child, and definitely do not kill him. She is his mother. It was so obvious. All Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do justice. Great, great story. Many of you are familiar with this story. It's one of the great stories from the Bible that many people are familiar with. First of all, we have the beginning of Solomon, son of David, succeeding his father on the throne. At the beginning of his reign, he asked for wisdom from God. This truly is a great request from him, and God is obviously pleased in him and grants his request. And then we have the example of the two women arguing, and the obviously wise choice between them that Solomon shows. It was impressive then, and it remains impressive today. So now we're going to continue a little bit in 1 Kings and talk about the wisdom of Solomon. 1 Kings chapter 5, which is actually chapter 4, verse 29 in normal Christian Bibles. And God gave Solomon abundant wisdom and understanding, and very great understanding, like the sand that is on the seashore. Like really, really big understanding. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. At the time, the great wisdom in the world was in Egypt, but he was much better than that. Verse 11, for he was wiser than all men. And then it names a couple. Then Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Maho. And his fame was in all the nations all around. So these are people that were known to be wise, while he excelled them all. And he spoke 3,000 proverbs. I think that's more than there are in the book of Proverbs. We only have some of them that are written. And his songs numbered 1,005. 1,005 songs. He spoke, which means he's doing music too. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon, even to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He's just interested in everything. He also spoke of animals, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish. He's understanding all kinds of things about the living world all around. People of all nations came to hear the wisdom of Solomon, sent by all kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. 1 Kings chapter 10. Now the queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of Yahweh. She came to test him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great caravan, with camels that bore spices, very much gold, and precious stones. And when she had come to Solomon, she talked with him about all that was in her heart. So they didn't just talk on the surface. This was a deep conversation. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, and the house that he had built, and the food of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his officials, and their clothing, and his cupbearers, and his ascent by which he went up to the house of Yahweh, there was no more spirit in her. It was just, everything was awesome. And she said to the king, "It was a true report that I heard in my own land of your acts and of your wisdom. However, I did not believe the words until I came and my eyes had seen it. Behold, not even half was told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame which I heard. Happy are your men, happy are these your servants, who stand continually before you, who hear your wisdom. Blessed is Yahweh your God, who delighted in you to set you on the throne of Israel. Because Yahweh loved Israel forever, he made you king to do justice and righteousness." And she gave the king 120 talents of gold. That's a lot of gold. And very many spices and precious stones. Never again was there such an abundance of spices as these, which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So Solomon had great beginnings, but later on, not so much. In 1 Kings 11, God is angry with Solomon, so we know that Solomon did not always follow through with the ways of God the way he should have. He was violating the mitzvot. I have also taught previously of how Solomon broke all the laws of the kings that were written in the Torah concerning the wives, the horses, the gold, and basically the way the Bible teaches it. I'm not going to read all that, but he goes in order. If you go back and read the actual laws for the kings, it says don't go to Egypt and get horses. It says don't multiply gold to yourselves, or whatever it is. It's like, and then you go to read Solomon. It's all in the same order. He does all the things wrong. He multiplies horses. He goes down to Egypt to get horses. He multiplies gold. He multiplies wives, like thousands of wives. He's just, so it's so disappointing that after the magnificent beginnings that Solomon had, he ends up not succeeding in pleasing God. With all the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom that he had, he still failed. He still failed God in many ways. I suspect that a significant part of that was pride. If you're so high, you just don't want to withhold anything from yourself. So anyway, that's Solomon. So remember that Solomon asked for wisdom, and God was happy to grant it to him. James, or Jacob, the brother of Yeshua, wrote a book. It's called James in the New Testament. He mentions wisdom as well. James chapter 1. I, Jacob, a servant of God and of the Lord Yeshua the Messiah, to the 12 tribes which are in the diaspora. Shalom. By the way, I didn't say it, but this is the New Jerusalem Bible that I'm reading out of. It's a recent production, started in 2022, came out. Jacob, a servant of God and of the Lord Yeshua the Messiah, to the 12 tribes which are in the diaspora. Shalom. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you fall into various trials. Well, nobody really counts it joy when they're falling into trials. Nobody likes that. But he says, count it joy, knowing that the testing of your emunah, of your faith, produces endurance. That's true. We know we're not going to get any better unless we go through trouble. God knows it too. He only allows us to go through the trouble that we can handle. But we have to go through trouble pretty consistently throughout the life. When you get old, it doesn't get any better. And let endurance have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in emunah, in faith, without any doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, driven by the wind and tossed. For that man should not think that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. This thing that I've been trying to do with the Batsion and seeing our identity and all that, it's been a little difficult because I have to be convinced that, I have to come back and remember that it truly is the Lord that's sending me, not just my own will. And so I had asked for wisdom about this, what to do. And then when I read this verse, it says, let him ask in faith, no, without any doubting. He who doubts is like a wind of a wave of the sea who is driven by the wind and tossed. And I'm like, okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll just trust and keep going. Hold to the course. So we need wisdom. We ask God, but we must ask without doubting or wavering. God will come through. God inhabits eternity, and God is willing to share his wisdom with us. We'll go back to the Torah portion now. This has to do with wisdom as well. Pharaoh dreams a dream. He sees 7 fat cattle. He sees 7 lean cattle. He also sees 7 fat ears of corn and 7 lean ears of corn. So we're going to not read the whole story, but we're getting to Genesis 41. Then after the dream, Pharaoh sent and calls Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. Get up here, bud. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. In the Bible, it says that Joseph shaved and changed his clothes. I love that. And that's wisdom on his part. He's not going to come up all scruffy looking. He's going to the highest. Pharaoh at the time is probably the biggest deal in the world. So he's going to see him. He's like, no, I'm not going in these clothes, and I got to shave before I go up there. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Remember the 2 guys in prison? He helped them. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, it's not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. I already talked about the shaving and changing his clothes. Then Pharaoh mentions that he has heard about Joseph from the cupbearer. The other guy died, remember? He was the baker. He died, but the cupbearer is still around, and he's the one that told the story. This entire circumstance was engineered by God to prepare for this eventuality. Joseph interprets for the 2 men in the prison, and now he is going to interpret for the Pharaoh of all Egypt. Except it's not really Joseph, is it? No, he is very plain about mentioning that it is not in him, but that God will give him an answer of peace. Joseph is certainly not wavering or doubting here, right? Like at James, he's like, yeah, he's like staying on the course. He is confident as he stands before the most powerful man in the world that he can hear from God and help Pharaoh with this dream. And sure enough, he does. I mean, a normal person would be shaking in their shoes standing up in front of this guy. And now you're supposed to be hearing from God and interpreting this dream? Well, he seems to have confidence, though. So there you go. Genesis 41:25. Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. What God is about to do, he has declared to Pharaoh. The 7 good cattle are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. The dream is one. The 7 thin and ugly cattle that came up after them are 7 years, and also the 7 empty heads of grain blasted with the east wind. They will be 7 years of famine. That is the thing which I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Not everybody has a vision of the next 14 years in the future. It's pretty awesome. Behold, 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt are coming. 7 years of famine will arise after them, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will not be known in the land by reason of that famine which follows, for it will be very grievous. The dream was doubled to Pharaoh, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look for a discreet and wise man, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint overseers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt's produce in the 7 plenteous years, 20%. Let them gather. Notice he doesn't say himself. He's not mentioning himself. He says, just find somebody to do this. Let them gather all the food of these good years to come and store grain under the hand of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. The food will be to supply the land against the 7 years of famine, which will be in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish through the famine. This is all amazing wisdom from God. 37, the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a one as this, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? It was so obvious to him. This is not just Joseph. This is the Spirit of God speaking. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, because God has shown you all of this, there is no one so discreet and wise as you. You shall be over my house. All my people will be ruled according to your word. Only in the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, behold, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in robes of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried before him, Avrech, which is bow the knee. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without you no man shall lift up his hand or his foot in all the land of Egypt. There was a time we went to a big old gathering in Ohio, and there was a big top tent. And it was like one of my first times with this group. And man, the guy was, there's like thousands of people here. And we're a huge big top tent. And the guy just, after all the music and everything, and we're all sitting here, and it's in the early evening and the sun is going down, and he proceeds to tell the story of Joseph and Pharaoh. And it was fantastic. Although for him at the time, it turned into be more of a prosperity gospel kind of a thing. God will make you rich if you just but believe, and that kind of a thing. So it was kind of limited by that. But it was awesome to just sit there and listen to that Bible. Man. But what a great story. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So as we know, the rich years happened, and Joseph stored up countless amounts of grain. Then, in the 7 lean years, Joseph sold the grain to the Egyptians. He didn't give it away. And to all the rest of the surrounding world. The end result being that all the wealth of Egypt and all the rest of the world all around was amassed unto Pharaoh. This was by the hand of God. And we see the final result much later in the book of Exodus, when just before the children of Israel leave Egypt, they are told by God to each ask their neighbors for gifts of gold, silver, and garments. And when they leave, they are carrying most of the wealth of Egypt with them. Unbelievable. The transfer of wealth to God's own people. This is what God did for the children of Israel. And it was not just for the children of Israel to become rich, although that was part of it. No, but it was also so that they would have all the supplies that they needed to make the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle when they're in the wilderness. They needed all this stuff, and God knew it. So he said, get the stuff before you go. They had all the gold they needed as well as everything else. And what a glorious thing they built. It was hard for me to imagine a group of 1 million people out there in the middle of the desert with this glorious thing in their midst, this dwelling place of God. It's also hard for me to deal with how rude and ornery they were to God and Moses throughout this whole ordeal, which they were, complaining, grumbling all the time, unbelief, even though they'd seen miracle after miracle. But they're human, so it just is. That's another story, though. The point is, Joseph walked with God. And through that, God not only brought to Egypt all the wealth of the world, but also that much of that wealth was transferred to God's people in the end. What a story. That's what wisdom can do. Job speaks of wisdom. In the book of Job, chapter 28, this is Job speaking. But where will wisdom be found? Where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its price. Neither is it found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me. The sea says, it is not with me. It cannot be gotten for gold, neither will silver be weighed for its price. It cannot be valued with the gold of Ophir, with the precious onyx or the sapphire. Gold and glass cannot equal it, neither will it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. No mention will be made of coral or of crystal. The price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Cush will not equal it, nor will it be valued with pure gold. Where then does wisdom come from? Where is the place of understanding? Seeing it is hidden from the eyes of all living and kept close from the birds of the sky. Abaddon and death, Abaddon is destruction. Abaddon and death say, we have heard a rumor of it with our ears. Man. Verse 23, God understands its way, for he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth, and he sees under all the heavens. He establishes the force of the wind. He measures out the waters by measure. When he made a decree for the rain and a way for the lightning of the thunder, then he saw it and he declared it. He established it and searched it out. To man, he said, behold, the fear of Adonai, that is wisdom. And to depart from evil is understanding. God. As far as we know, the book of Job is written far before anything else. It's the earliest book of the Bible. And this wisdom is so rich in this book. So, this is our job, is it not? To fear Adonai and to depart from evil? Yes, that's our job. Psalms. Psalm 37, verse 30. The mouth of the righteous talks of wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The Torah of his God is in his heart. None of his steps shall slide. I'm going to read that one again. The mouth of the righteous talks of wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice. The Torah of his God is in his heart. None of his steps shall slide. Breathtaking. Psalm 90. You've heard this one before. So teach us to count our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. It's all about the life that we live and so forth, and appreciating that God has given moment by moment to us. Teach us to number our days and that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Psalm 111. The fear of Yahweh we say this every week, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. All those who do his work have a good understanding. His praise endures forever. Yeah. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. By the way, Proverbs has 31 chapters. It's a great book for a young man or any person to read a chapter a day for a month. Or every month. You could just read it over and over, which I used to do when I was younger. Here's the beginning of the book, Proverbs 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple. You don't have to stay dumb. Give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young man, that the wise man may hear and increase in learning, that the man of understanding may attain to wise counsel, to understand a proverb and parables, the words and riddles of the wise. Verse 7, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. The foolish despise wisdom and instruction. So if you want the beginning of knowledge, you got to have the fear of God. That's where it all begins. Without that, you're not there. So, moving on to Ecclesiastes, another book written by Solomon, also has wisdom as its theme. It's very philosophical. I love the book of Ecclesiastes. One could say that he goes through a whole bunch of things in the book, and then sums it all up at the end with a wonderful statement about serving God being the whole duty of man. I love that book. Perhaps this indicates that he came back to God at the end of his life. Well, I'm not so sure, but we can hope so. Jeremiah puts things in perspective. Jeremiah 9. Verse 22, this is what Yahweh says. Do not let the wise man glory in his wisdom. Do not let the mighty man glory in his might. Do not let the rich man glory in his riches. But let him who glories glory in this, that he understands and knows me. Yeshua said it different. He said, rejoice not that you have, I don't remember what it was, but rejoice that your names are written in the book of life. Hallelujah. Let him who glories glory in this, that he understands and knows me, that I am Yahweh, who exercises chesed, justice, and righteousness in the earth. For I delight in these things, says Yahweh. He delights in chesed, justice, and righteousness in the earth. Okay, we're going to a dark part here. In Ezekiel 28, we read of the fall of the enemy of our souls, Hasatan. I'll read this as a warning to all of us to not get exalted in our own selves. If we do get wisdom, don't get exalted thinking that we're so great. Because this is what happened to our enemy. Ezekiel 28:14. You were the anointed cherub who covers. Then I set you up on the holy mountain of God. You have walked up and down in the middle of the stones of fire. You were perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. By the abundance of your commerce, your insides were filled with violence, and you have sinned. Therefore I have cast you as profane out of God's mountain. I have destroyed you, O covering cherub, from the middle of the stones of fire. Who knows what this even means? Your heart was lifted up because of your beauty. You have corrupted your wisdom by reason of your splendor. Oh, God. I have cast you to the ground. I have laid you before kings that they may see you. By the multitude of your iniquities, in the unrighteousness of your commerce, you have profaned your sanctuaries. Therefore, I have brought out a fire from the middle of you, and it has devoured you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And turned you to ashes on the earth in the sight of all those who see you. All those who know you among the peoples will be astonished at you. You have become a terror, and you will exist no more. It's pretty obvious who that's talking about. It says it's to Cyrus or something, I can't remember, in the introduction of this section. It says it's a prophecy to this man, a king, but as it gets in, it's obvious. It's more than just about that guy. This is obviously about the enemy of our souls. So, Yeshua mentions Solomon when he is dealing with the Torah teachers and Pharisees who are accusing him in Matthew 12. The queen of the south, remember the queen of Sheba? The queen of the south will rise up in the judgment with this generation and will condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, someone greater than Solomon is here. Wow! Man, what a statement. Yeshua mentions wisdom for those in the last days as well. When he's warning about, well, here, we'll read it. Luke 21 and verse 10. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation, everybody's heard this, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes, famines, and plagues in various places. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and will persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues, and prisons, bringing you before kings and governors for my name's sake. But it will turn out as a testimony for you. Settle it, therefore, in your hearts, not to prepare beforehand how to answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries will not be able to withstand or to contradict. Phew. Wow. So don't worry about it, what you're going to say. If it ever happens like that, don't worry. He'll give us something to say. So I've kind of run out of time for quoting verses. And it's too bad because there was a lot. There was a lot. In Romans 11, where Paul is talking about the Jews and Gentiles in Messiah, remember that? The olive tree with the branches being grafted in, and then some other branches are being cut off. He sums it up at the end. He says, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and the knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past tracing out. God. That's just the one body, Jew and Gentile, one in Messiah. That's what he's talking about. It's awesome. I'm glad we sang that today. 1 Corinthians is a lot about wisdom, which I didn't realize. If you read 1 Corinthians, the first 3 chapters, I'm not going to read it here, but the wisdom is in there a lot. It's talking about, the Greeks seek after wisdom, Jews seek after a sign, and I think, anyway, it goes all into this stuff. For 3 chapters, it's a big discussion. So 1 Corinthians is a lot about wisdom in the first 3 chapters. You'll have to read it for yourselves. But also in chapter 12, the first manifestation of the Spirit that is mentioned is the word of wisdom. That's the first one. I'll finish up by reading some of the book of Ephesians. We'll start in chapter 1 and verse 15. For this cause I also, having heard of the emunah in the Lord, the trust or believing faith in the Lord, for this cause I also, having heard of the emunah in the Lord, Yeshua, which is among you, and the love which you have toward all the holy ones, do not cease to give thanks for you, making mention of you in my prayers, that the God of our Lord Yeshua the Messiah, the Father of glory, may give to you a spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him. We can all grow in our understanding of wisdom and understanding of God. Having the eyes of your heart enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of his calling. You may know. I knew a man in Christ many years ago. This is what Paul says. I knew a man in Christ. I'm not, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. But he saw it. He's talking about himself. He saw this thing. Well, eyes of your heart enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of your calling. God is able to reveal that to each of us. And what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the holy ones? Not our inheritance, his inheritance. He inherits us. And what is the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who believe, according to that working of the strength of his might, which he worked in Messiah when he raised him from the dead and made him to sit at his right hand in the heavenly places. That is the power that he is making available to us. So it's a big thing that we're involved in. It's hard to conceive of it, actually, I think. Now, going to Ephesians 3, verse 10, to the intent that now, through the assembly, by way of us, the manifold wisdom of God might be made known to the principalities and the powers in the heavenly places. God is going to show the evil group of people that are our enemies, that work for our enemy, by us, the manifold wisdom of God. That's what that just said. To the intent that now, through the assembly, the manifold wisdom of God might be made known to the principalities and powers in the heavenly places, according to the eternal purpose. He had this in mind forever, which he accomplished in Messiah, Yeshua, our Lord. In him we have boldness and access in confidence through our emunah in him. We all have access to God through Yeshua, our Messiah. Hallelujah. I guess this is partly to say that if we are truly to reevaluate ourselves as to who we are and what we're doing here at Bat Zion, which I believe we should, this job is all about wisdom. It behooves us to be awake to the Ruach and do this well. Shabbat Shalom.